Good morning, guten Tagen, everybody. It's or lunchtime. It's 12 o'clock on a Friday, which means it's Wow Ergonomics. I'm just pretending that I can speak foreign languages there for a minute, and clearly I can't. I have not a Scooby-Doo's how to speak anything in a foreign language. In fact, I'm going to tell you this now. I actually answered a poll this morning on LinkedIn, which was written in Polish.
Oh, very good.
Yeah. And I said to the person that had written it, I said, I picked the right answer, because when you've answered the poll, you can then see the percentages.
Yes.
And clearly I'd picked the right answer. And I said, I'm very pleased I picked the right answer. Not that I understood the question or the responses, but I gave it an effort. Maybe I should go back actually and see what I've actually committed myself to.
I think Google Translate may need to be used, Graham, and just see what have you actually said.
Yeah, I'm surprised actually the tech doesn't automatically do that.
Well, that's interesting you should say that, because I've got a colleague of mine who's based out in Berlin, so he's sort of in the eastern part of Germany. But he started to be responsible for what and I'm going to get this wrong here. I've teed myself up and I'm getting it wrong. But the area here we go. He's looking after cash, which is Czech, Austria, Slovakia, and Hungary. Cash. Oh, right. Yeah, I think that's right. He's responsible for that.
You have to clear your cache every now and again.
Yeah. Yes, absolutely. But he's looking after cash, and one of the things he's been doing, and actually I'll get you to follow him and you can see it, is translating all of his posts into those native languages. Because what he's finding is to try and build up a network within those markets. And I think again it's appreciated by the local speakers, is the fact that the LinkedIn post is in their native language and not just in German and they click some sort of translate button. He actually translates it into their local language, and on the back of that he's getting up a lot of traction and interest, because people are going, hey, look, this guy is taking the time to put that post in our language, even though it's not his first spoken language.
I think that's incredibly important. And a lot of websites now do offer that, but some do it with technology, and you do wonder whether actually it gets it right. Because I remember those famous episodes of Top Gear, for example, where they talked about certain cars which were launched into certain markets around the world, and where the name of the car was inappropriate in those languages, and led to those cars not being necessarily quite so accepted as they would have been had they not referenced male genitalia. So it's of course it's not gonna be the right thing to do. But I wonder whether anyone's had experiences in the audience over the week as this goes out. Do let us know. But if you're involved in the ergonomic sector, I wonder if you've ever known over the years a product, for example, that's gone out and maybe the name of the product or something in the guidebook of that product has, let's say, fallen short because it's when it's gone over to a different country, the translation didn't translate. May well be a case that somebody's got a little story to tell us there. I'm sure someone that's been around in ergonomics for a little while, like Guy Osmond, will have undoubtedly come across it.
Yes.
I won't tell you the story now, in full, because I want this to stay on the air. But I do have a story about when I first took over a stationery company, and there were two German products on the shelf in the warehouse come shop where we were. That one of them was that these are both products that you would never use anymore. One was a typewriter oil. That shows you it coming back.
I mean, basically half the audience have just haven't got a clue what a bloody typewriter is.
Half the audience are going, what's a typewriter?
Hang on, Google typewriter. What?
Yeah, and the other was a pencil sharpener, which are still sold, but
Yeah.
it was one of those wind up.
Oh, the one that at school that clamped onto a desk, and you used to sort of wind the what? Yeah.
Yeah. You used to have great fun with those at school.
Yeah.
But
Or putting
the other
other
one was
kids'
one of
fingers
those.
in there.
And I got into the warehouse, and the guy that was running the business was into his 70s, and clearly it just had flown over his head like a cuckoo. And I looked at these two things that are put on the shelf next to each other and the names of them, and I just went, you can't have those products on the shelf like that. The two names, if anyone wants to know the names, please do get in touch, and I will happily DM you the names.
We can't put them across the ticker at the bottom, can we, and not say them, or is that still maybe not appropriate?
We could potentially do that, but I just think it'd be nice to create some engagement by people asking us. If I will let people know on the Instagram, because that would be safe. I will let people know on the Instagram alongside this week's show that what those two things are. In fact, what I'll do now, just to make sure that I remember that, is I'll take a photo of us in situ from this week's show. There we are. That's going to go on the Instagram in a bit with the two names of the products.
Right, okay.
And if you're listening, you can then.
Will those two names be under our faces? I'm just suddenly thinking, well, then people think that, look at these two.
Maybe I should do that. Maybe I should do it that way. Just
I'm desperately trying to think, what on earth are those words going to be now?
Yeah, absolutely. Now, have you been anywhere this week? Have you been out to see anything?
Lots of people. In fact, just before the show started, I was just sort of in my mind running through all the people I've seen in the last week to 10 days, and it's a bit of a Wow Ergonomic guest. Who's who I've seen.
Wow.
So the man, the legend, Guy Osman.
Yeah,
I've seen Guy a couple of times. Andrew Shepherd from Flock. I've seen Andrew a couple of times. I was with Mark Rigby from Online Ergonomics yesterday.
Now they're building a new building at the moment. Were you actually in situ where they were building?
Yes, I was at the old building, and Mark pointed out the window and went, "Did you see the new one on the way in?" And I went, "Yes, I did clock it on the way in." So we're, I think he was talking about early Feb, and then I think there was a threat of a party. So we'll have to hope our names are on the guest list, Graham, as to whether we get an invite to the ceremonial cutting of the ribbon.
Wow. Whereabouts is it?
Literally over the road from where they are, like that's 50 yards.
Yeah, that's very descriptive for people that don't know where they are.
Okay, well, about as far east in England as you can go. So it's in a town called Beccles, which I think is very close to Lowestoft, if I'm correct. It's like if I'd gone much further, I'd have been on the way to Holland. Well, I'd have been halfway to the office then in the Netherlands, because you are literally, that's it. There's not much further east.
Can you get a ferry from there?
Yeah. I tell you why, because I tell you who was in before me was Tom Schmidt from Score. Who you probably know. Tom's very well known in the ergonomic trade. And I pulled into the car park, and it's like there's a Dutch registered car there. And I was, Tom Schmidt's here. He's got the ferry over from, I presume, The Hague or somewhere into Harwich, and then he sort of drove up from Harwich. So there's another one, Tom Schmidt. It's another one to add to the list.
If people are listening and they don't know any of these people,
connect with them on LinkedIn.
Connect with them
ergonomic,
on LinkedIn.
Ergonomic legends, a lot of them.
Very useful people to know indeed.
Score,
obviously, they do things like footrests, etc.
They do, and I always think of them as those sort of, and this is something that everyone can relate to. When you go to the dentist, is what I always think, and I'm thinking something for Mrs. Coath probably uses in her daily work, is those sort of, are they called saddle stools? Would that be Graham, the correct phrase? But those little stools that they sort of the dentists and the dentist assistants sort of perch on. They don't look particularly comfortable, but that's what they make and make their lives a lot easier.
Well, yeah, they do sit on saddle stools, and there's a good reason for that. folks, if you've ever been to the dentist and you've noticed that your dentist is sitting on a saddle stool, one of the main reasons is because actually, if you think about it, a dentist leans forward for the majority of the time, which is why most of them get bad backs. Because they're not sat. Well, yeah, they're not sat in the most particularly good position. But they the hope is that actually by giving them a stool where they lean forward, and they can't obviously have a back on that as well, because normally it's quite a tight space. And of course, the dental nurse has to pass them instruments almost across their shoulder. You imagine if you had some kind of back on the, big back on the chair. Sometimes they can have a little back, but if they had any kind of big back on the chair, they'd be knocking instruments out of their hand and into you all the time, which wouldn't go down too well. But yeah, no, it's a massive back care stroke musculoskeletal issues is a major issue within the dental industry, because of you're maintaining quite a static position for a long period of time, with a lot of the time as well vibrating instruments. So if you think about it, and that applies to the same problem with anyone in the construction industry that's holding onto a breaker or something like that. Anything that's making your muscles do that all of the time, and you're holding that away from the body, it's a weight for a long period of time. But even like little micro movements of the wrist and whatever with something that's making your hand do that is not particularly great. So yeah, it's they really do need to look after themselves.
And following on from that, Graham, over the last couple of weeks, I've been in to see some optometrists and audiologists, and it's quite interesting that this, talking about professional people who are sitting in sort of unnatural positions for long periods of time, it's exactly the same sort of challenges they're experiencing because of they're sort of leaning forward. Exactly. A lot of the problems that the dentists are having are the similar issues that the optometrists and the audiologists are happening. So it's really interesting that there's a bit of a light being sort of shone on that by those organizations, and identifying that those trades, those professions need support, from ergonomics. We always think about ergonomics and workspace ergonomics as someone sat down at a desk, but actually those sort of people who are not quite working in an office environment, but have a lot of those sort of traits and sort of common themes, also need some sort of support as well. So it goes very much beyond the computer worker. It can also go into those other fields as well.
Where do you think it might go in the future? It's quite interesting when you look at any of those areas to think, where could that potentially go? I mean, you could see that. I mean, for example, dentistry, you wonder whether like anyone just sort of looks at it from a different perspective every now and again and goes, right, forget everything we already know about the way that we do this. What if, blue sky thinking on it, what if your dentist got dangled in like Tom Cruise in a Mission Impossible movie, and was actually hung from the center and could, just be looking down. I know that's daft or seems daft, but what if the person could be held in a different position? What if, there was a different way of getting support? Maybe the use of robotics. Could we actually get like you do in some surgery now, where actually it's robot arms that are actually doing the work, but controlled by a human who can actually stand back in a more comfortable position? Who knows? Obviously there's a cost implication of that, but given the fact that most dentistry will probably go private in years to come, will people consider that, especially if they want longer careers? And the same with, you see, the optometrist one is a really interesting one, because until you said that, I'd not really considered it, but they do sort of lean forward, and that sort of position for a long time.
They're leaning into that machine to sort of look through into your eyes, where they change the sort of different types of lens.
I know, and you just think, well, is there not a way where you could literally just make the machine fit the height of the person, and then have a platform that the person on the other side is raised or lowered so that actually it suits them. You just don't
Well,
know, do you?
I mean, one thing that could be the case is does an element of self-diagnosis come in? Now, I think that's
Yeah,
quite difficult with teeth, but other elements, if you think when you go for a checkup at the dentist, are there elements that you can do yourself that maybe take away from, so actually the focus is on you as the patient and your
as
seating,
treatment. Yeah.
and therefore the skills of the optometrist almost comes in after that and takes away some of those sort of functions or activities that are maybe causing some of those sort of posture challenges. So that could be one thing, I guess, is can it be put back onto the patient and the chair built for the patient, and then there's a process that follows, as I say, some sort of self or part self-diagnosis. Who knows? AI, will AI have a part to play in all of this technology?
Well, I'm glad you mentioned that, because I was actually writing a piece on that this morning. And it was really quite interesting. So it was something that a client had actually put in front of me, and it was a piece of AI which had originally been designed in France to help patisseries identify different pastries for stock levels.
Okay.
Right. So this piece of AI would actually look at different pastries and would immediately go, "You've sold X of those."
Yeah.
Yeah, it would know. It would identify pastries, right? And some clever spark realised that if it could do that, if you could build a stronger version of it, it could identify cancer cells.
Wow. Okay.
Yeah. So it's now being used to look at parts of the body and identify cancerous cells as opposed to non-cancerous cells. So you do wonder, is there a part where AI will start to be used in that sense, where maybe you put your mouth into something and AI like looks around your mouth and goes, there you go, that's what's going on in there, and then this is what you need. You just don't know, do you?
You sort of think, you sort of have an impression as to it'll do this. There's a point that it's gonna help with, and then every week, as you say, I think I saw a similar article that you're talking about, and there's this, and there's this, and there's this, and thinking, where's this going to stop?
Yeah.
What's it? Are there going to be certain professions that are just going to become absolutely redundant? Will there be in 10 or 15 years' time professions that don't exist, that existed now, that have gone? We jokingly said about the typewriter and technology. Will there be things that are just absolutely replaced and become obsolete in 10 or 15, 20 years' time?
Well, they say that about several professions, but then I don't see the professions actually going. I mean, there's been quite a lot about that occurring within the field of radiography, for example, that a lot of radiographers, that a big part of their job is going to be sort of taken over by technology. But then I still think at the end of the day, is the tech going to push the button? And the answer to that is no, right? So in terms of being able to calculate and know and have all of those years of knowledge about whether or not this is the right level of radiation or whatever, the buck is probably still going to come down to a person. What it should do, if we think about it, and there's a lot of processes, just make the process more efficient and maybe streamline it and make it faster, and maybe part of the problem is, maybe in the future we will have less people in certain areas that are coming through, right? Because of conditions or pay or whatever else. I mean, we know we've had so many doctors and nurses striking or whatever. It's society has got to find a way of having the right people in the right positions and still the quality of service being offered. And so maybe it's just a part of the overall kind of shake up in lots of different professions about actually we're going to end up with experts in their field doing this, and some of the grunt, whereas we think of AI taking out the grunt in maybe office work by, getting rid of copying, pasting from spreadsheets, all this and that. There's grunt in lots of professions where actually maybe some of that will get taken away, and allowing people to spend more time with research, becoming, professional at a higher level, so that actually when it comes to the treatment or whatever, that's where they're spending their time.
And let's be honest, there's a lot of waiting lists out there if you think about it. So actually, does the AI just speed everything along? Can we see 8 people a day instead of 4? Can we address those waiting lists? So you're not going to get to a situation where someone's got the 12:30 and they're going twiddling their thumbs, they're done. There's such a backlog of people, and also with a growing population, we're going to need some process to speed up those servers. As an aging population, as there's more demand, actually it doesn't remove the physical people from the process. It just allows us to be a lot more efficient and takes away the waiting list. Whether it's the doctors, whether it's the dentist, whether it's lots of different, how many times, we can't see you for 3 months, lots of different things. If we could speed that up and just get people seen a lot quicker and turn it around a lot quicker, actually it doesn't remove the people, it just removes the waiting lists, and actually the service and efficiency, the efficiencies become better and the service becomes better.
Yep. And the other part of all of this is making it very clear where the access is to the technology, right? And therefore potentially education as well.
Yeah.
How do we get people to interface with the technology when the technology is available? And I'll give you a beautiful example of this.
Okay.
You mentioned Mrs. Coath. I had to take Mrs. Coath along to one of our 2 local doctors' centres. She'd never been to. It's under new ownership.
Okay.
And 2 different doctors have come together, and so she'd never been to the new surgery. Yeah. So she asked, "Can I give her a lift up there at lunchtime, etc." And we went in. And as we went through the door, there was a big queue of people waiting to talk to the receptionist to get booked in. And I just said to her, "Don't worry about that." And we just walked straight past the queue and we booked in. And as we did it, everybody else in the queue looked round and went, "Oh, right." Because there, in that doctor's surgery, on the wall is a booking in machine, right? Mm-hmm. And you literally go in and you confirm your date of birth, etc. And it says, "Is this you?" And you go, "Yeah." And then it says, "You're now booked in." But clearly, most people didn't know it was there.
Yeah.
Right. So that just highlights another aspect of this, which is that technology is great, but we have got to make we've got to make it really obvious that it's there, and we've got to make it and we've got to show people to begin with, this is how you use this. Because if you don't, and you don't do that educational piece, nobody ends up using the great technology you put into place to actually speed the process up.
Now, I wonder, Graham, whether this is a generational thing, just out of interest. I don't know whether you did this as you looked at the queue. Excuse me. Was the people in the queue of maybe, say, the 60, 65 plus? So I wonder again, and this is where, as you say, the technology is there, but you've got to engage all ages in its use, because I wonder if it was people who were of an older age who maybe aren't as tech savvy and thought, I would rather go over there and speak to that person than go over there and press buttons on the wall. Well, and that's a key piece for technology. If it is that, and I'm just guessing that your answer could well be that, there's a piece there that's got to be done around engagement of everyone and not just certain demographics.
Well, I do take this with a pinch of salt, folks, because it is going to be meant with a pinch of salt. But yeah. I could probably safely say that bit of technology probably only works for people who are middle-aged like me, right? Because the thing is with people that are middle-aged like me is we're busy and we don't have time to wait in the queue, and we don't want to wait in the queue, and quite frankly we're a bit grumpy, and therefore waiting in the queue just makes us more grumpy, so we just don't want to do it. I'm sure some slightly older people who are retired, whatever that is, probably quite enjoy just hanging around in the doctor's surgery for an hour or two, because it means that there's somebody to talk to, the receptionist. In fact, that was part of the problem, was that someone was talking to the receptionist. And
I always feel sorry for the receptionist in those situations, because the one eye is talking to the person, the other eye is seeing the 10 people in the queue folding their arms, rolling their eyes.
And there was someone doing that. There was someone literally like up against the wall going, "Oh my goodness, I can't believe it." Right? Total Victor Meldrew. Brilliant.
Victor Meldrew.
But I'm going to say that maybe the two demographics that would not have seen that may have been the older people, but maybe younger people as well. Because younger people probably would have gone in and they would have done this. And they would have just waited.
Yeah,
because they wouldn't have seen the thing on the wall. Whereas my age group, your age group, we're quite inquisitive, and we're like, how do I circumnavigate this? There's an answer, let's do it. I bet a lot of young people would have been like,
they'd have probably enjoyed the fact they could stand for another 10 minutes looking at their phone and justify it. Justifiable phone time.
So that tells us another thing. By the way, folks, if you're listening today, what you have noticed is that we are coming up with some amazing ideas that are all based on sound ergonomic principles, and actually may end up being the future. What should happen then for the younger generation, if you think about it, is, I do feel like this is turning into almost like an episode of Top Gear, you know, where they used to like go, right, imagine if. Yeah. Well, imagine if. All right, James. Richard. Imagine if
Jeremy.
What we did was, as they came into the doctor's surgery, it recognized that they got a mobile phone in their hand, and it pinged them a message that went, "Do you want to book in?"
Now then.
You see? That's really where it should be at. In fact, what it should do is, there's already a system in place where it does ping you a message to say, don't forget your appointment. So surely the sensible thing would be, at the given time of the appointment, it then pings up and a little alarm on your phone going, are you at the appointment? If you are, press this button now, register, and you're in. You see? I've just solved all of that. And if you're watching from one of the hospital systems, etc., you are, the address to send the check to will be at the end of the episode. So you can
check. We've just talked about technology, and you've just thrown in check. We'll be sending you some sort of QR code
over. It's funny you should say that, because I actually saw a LinkedIn post yesterday about someone moaning about receiving a check. I'll tell you what it was. It was a marketing company, and they were bemoaning the fact that in this day and age, they'd been sent by a client a check, which now meant that they had to waste a good hour of their day to travel, because there are no branches of a lot of banks now in wherever you are, to the nearest town that has a branch to deposit said check, so that they could then receive this money. And they were saying, why in this day and age is anybody owning a checkbook stroke paying with a check?
I wonder what the number. And the reason I ask this about numbers is it always fascinates me, because I've just been reading a piece about the Royal Mail, and they were saying that since 2011, there's half the number of letters are delivered by the Royal Mail than there were in so now to 2011, half the number, because they're talking about them doing 3 days and getting rid of Saturdays and all that sort of thing. I wonder what you know what I mean? If you go back to the checks heyday, I don't know, 90s, do you reckon? Early 2000s, something like that.
Yeah.
I wonder what the number of checks being cashed is now, as opposed to 20, 25 years ago. You know, we're saying about typewriters and things that don't exist anymore. I bet it's I mean, there'll be a way of finding out, but I bet it's dropped off an absolute cliff, something like that.
I'm actually going to Google it while we're talking, because I think that's number of checks cashed in the UK in 2000. We'll do last year, yeah? In UK 2023. Let's see if it's got a number. How many checks are used in the UK? Number of checks used to make payments continued to decline over the past year, falling by 14% compared with 2021. My word.
Go on then.
Well,
go on then.
If anyone can guess this number, well done. This is staggering.
Okay.
I would not have guessed this number considering the conversation that we just had. 129 million.
In 2023, 2020.
Yeah.
120. I mean, I can't think of anything that we pay for as a household or Baccarel as a business where we pay with a check.
I know what it will be. People paying schools for things.
It probably is.
Just wow.
So that's almost, let's work it out. That's about 2.5, let's say 2. That's 2 checks per person in the UK. Not adults, everyone. Let's throw them all in, kids, grannies. That's 2 checks for every single person.
Wow. That's staggering.
I wonder what that is. It'd be interesting to see, though, what that drops to next year. Do you know what I mean? As more and more every month.
That was quite a big percentage drop on the previous year. So it'd be interesting to see how that's just graduate. Do you know what? It's probably all of the old people. Sorry, it's dreadful. We shouldn't really say that, but it's probably all of the old people in the UK just writing checks left, right, and centre. You know, I'll write you a check.
There's a million people writing 129 checks each, probably.
My mum still writes checks for everything.
Is
she? Yeah. And it's the most annoying thing ever. Right? It's like if you say, oh, give the kids some money for Christmas or something, you know, she'll write a check. And you just think, well, no. Now I've got to cash that.
Yeah.
You know, what you just gift card, cash, bank transfer, whatever.
Yeah.
You know, not a check. Please don't go there. It's fascinating though. I mean,
I'd love to hear anyone who's watching the show, if they put it in the comments. What was the last check you received? Who was the last check you received? You know, who was it from? And just sort of try and give us a bit of, not sort of context, but is there something we're not thinking of where we go, oh yeah, it's that? But I mean, I genuinely can't remember the last time I received a check and went and banked it. As you say, I remember with the schools, particularly the junior schools, it was sending in checks and all that because they didn't want to handle cash and maybe didn't have the staff to look after bank transfers. And therefore, if they'd got a bit of physical paper against a kid's name, they were sort of, you know, they were laughing. But I wonder, as I say, it probably is the older generation. But it's fascinating.
Most schools now have an app.
Yeah.
Which most of them are difficult. But most of them do have an app or several apps. And that actually is an ergonomic conversation. We will have that one in a minute. But yeah, they do have an app, and that tends to be the way that you pay. I do wonder who it is that's out there that's paying by check. The conversation I'm going to say about the apps is that the one thing that annoys me is when you have different organizations, multiple apps that all do the same thing, right?
Yeah.
And you must you must, being a man that's out on the road, must agree with this. You know where I'm going with this.
You know, I was going to raise the same point. Go on.
Parking. Just so annoying, right?
Yeah.
If part of your job is to go around the country and visit people, and you can't always park at people's premises because not everyone has available parking, and therefore you have to do that bit where you have to look up the nearest car park there, walk from there, whatever, right? You have to pay for your parking. Now, the most annoying option available is by coin only, 100%, because A, who carries cash, right? And B, whatever you look up online as to what it is to pay at that car park, by the time you get there, it's gone up 10p. So you have not got the right amount of change.
Correct.
Categorically, every single time, right? The best option, of course, is card. Makes it simple.
Phone or card,
phone or card,
Apple Pay or whatever.
done.
Sorted.
Get your receipt, lovely, sorted. Thank you very much. Some of them even send you an invoice. Beautiful. Of course, there is always the option of the parking app, which, and for people that don't realize this, if there's a machine and it's not working on the cash or card front, but it has got a parking app number, you are legally obliged to pay by that. Yeah.
Now
you've got to contest it, right?
Yeah.
If not, and so you haven't got means to do that. But that's the thing.
Now here's a story on that. Here's a story on that.
Yeah.
So we went to North Wales last year on holiday for a few days. We went to visit a castle. I may even have told you this story, whether it was on the air or off the air. And you couldn't pay by cash. You couldn't pay by card. You could only pay by app, right? Yeah. Neither my wife or I had the app on our phone, and there was no even 3G signal. So you sort of all you're seeing is like 50 adults walking around a car park doing this, trying to get some signal to download the flipping app. But it was like, and I think in the end, I think we gambled and we went off and did what we were doing on the basis that we got some signal up the hill and we managed to do it all up there and then did it. But it was like, okay, if you're going to surely have no cash and no card, I get no cash, maybe the card machine was off, but if it's app, make sure there's some damn 4G signal so we can download the app.
Yeah, sure. And this is good ergonomics. Ultimately it's making available the right thing within the environment to help people. It's good human factors. If you've implemented only a system and
I must shut the blind because the sun's right in my eye.
Yeah, and you haven't made he's going off.
I'm back.
And you haven't made available all of the resources in order for that system to work, then you're putting an obstacle in the way of people, which actually causes them a problem. You need to remove it. But yeah, the fact that there are so many drives me mad, right? I've now left it to my wife to have all of the apps on her phone, and I've just dissolved any kind of responsibility from it whatsoever, because I just find it. I used to find it so annoying. I used to have, like on your phone, you have like a group thing that you put different apps into. I used to have a group just for parking apps, and it was literally full. I think I had like 9 at one point. Different parking apps from around the country, and you'd arrive, and then it's like, and some of them are good and some of them are really bad. Some of them like halfway through the process it will go like, that's not your password, and you think, oh, I think it is my password. So then you try and do like, I've forgotten my password, and then it would say, oh, I've sent it to your old telephone number, and it's like, oh, I haven't got my old telephone number, and then you end up having to phone them, and they go, right, well, prove it's you. And I'm like, well, I'm trying to park the car here. I've actually got an appointment. I need to, it just infuriating.
Yeah, I think last week I said I met with Andrew Shepherd. We had a problem at the car park where we were parking, both with the same issue, and I think we ended up we had to ring it in. I think in the end, because we couldn't get the app, and it was just like flipping heck. What was wrong with a couple of 50p's? And I know that's not the we talked about going cashless and all that sort of thing, but it's just so flipping frustrating. But also, sorry, we were sort of lightly pulling the leg of the older generation. But actually, you think about it, a lot of the older generation who would maybe get in their car to drive into a city centre or wherever, maybe don't have a smartphone, and find it difficult. I wonder how many of those sort of older generation are now put off from going and visiting certain shopping areas or locations, because they maybe don't have the smartphone and therefore don't have the app, and actually just find it a little bit too difficult. So I know we were saying about clocking in at the doctors or booking in and all that. That's pretty straightforward, but that sort of downloading multiple apps, I wonder if they thought of the impact on members of the older generation, or people who maybe find it difficult to operate the smartphone. Doesn't need to be someone slightly older, someone who maybe finds it quite challenging. So,
Well, again, you'll be pleased to know that Graham Coath, the entrepreneur of technology, has actually come up with the answer. And again, if you're watching this and you want the answer, and you're willing to go out there and develop it, again, you can send the bank transfer after the show.
Yeah.
I'm not going to say check again, am I? So I have actually come up with a solution, and the solution is this. Okay. We need someone to develop one app, right, which talks to all of the companies who make all of the other apps, right?
Right.
And even allows you, especially for someone like you, to preload it with money.
Ooh, nice.
Right? Yeah. So you've got an X amount of credit. And then what you do is when you arrive somewhere, it goes, it geocaches as well. So it says you are at location, do you want to park? You go, yes, you put your thing in, and it talks to whichever of the groups are responsible for that car park. It does the transaction, loads onto your app, does all of the bit in the background. You don't need to see any of that. And they just charge you a very small amount of extra money for the delivery of that, right? But think about it. That app will work at every car park. So they can literally make money, tiny bit of money, but they could make money from every single car park. And everyone would go with that app because they think, do you know what? I can have one app now, talks to all of the others, done. Doesn't take the business away from any of the others. So you're not getting rid of the infrastructure. Just think about it. That's brilliant. It's genius. That is one app, one process, done. Geocaching is the way to go as well. It should just tell you you're at this car park. Why should you be putting a number in? It should tell you you are at this car park number. Right? Your phone literally knows where you are anyway. Right? Of course it does. Right? Google knows what you've been talking about. You all know that when you've been talking about something, and that freaks people out, doesn't it? When you've been talking about something in the evening, all sat there with your phones out, and then you go to search something, it's like, has that been listening to me?
Yeah.
And you're like, well, actually it has. Yeah, it's really, really, really freaky. What I'd love to know as well, while we were on the subject of checks, is this is more economics than ergonomics, but it's a great conversation. I'd love to know from any economic experts out there just how much better cash flow has improved in the economy since we got rid of checks. Because to my mind, checks used to be used as a bit of an excuse.
I used to always remember companies, when you wanted paid, would give you a post-dated check. I'll give you the check, it's dated next Friday. It's like, I'd always remember the fact that wasn't covered under your insurance. So them giving you the check, if anything went wrong, it was invalid. But yeah, post-dated checks, great way of delaying payment.
Well, it used to be the thing, wasn't it? You used to phone up credit control, and credit control would go, or one of the directors would go, tell them the check's in the post. And credit control would go, Mr. Jones says the check's in the post, and you just have to trust that it was. And then then even if they had put that check in the post, they put it in the post second class. They probably do it the next day. So by the time you've got that, and then if they post dated it as well, yes, you've got the check, but you've lost a week. You've lost a week. I just love to know how much better cash flow has actually become for a lot of businesses since we got, since that number of checks has gone down. Because ultimately, now when people pay, they pay. If you set up a standing order or direct debit for a company and whatever, that's going out your bank on that day. It's going to happen. There you go. Look, we put loads of the world to right today.
We have. I've got a question to ask before the show ends, because I wasn't on last week's show. Did Paul Baker get to number 1?
Well, no, I don't think they did.
Right.
I don't think they did. I think they stalled. I need to double check with him. Right.
Okay.
But I think they stalled at number 3. But 3 in the heritage charts is good. But thank you for asking. I think it was a great effort. It was always going to be difficult to knock certain people off the top spot, but it was it was very, very good. We had a great show last week. For anyone that didn't watch last week's show, please do go and rewatch that back. Stephen hasn't watched it yet. He is going to on his flight to Amsterdam,
Berlin.
Is it
Berlin?
Berlin.
Berlin. So I will be watching last week's show. I haven't had a chance to watch it.
Take my breath away.
What was? Hang on. What film was that from?
Was that Top Gun?
I thought it was some Days of Thunder, wasn't it? Which was
Days of Thunder? Yeah, it was one of those, wasn't it?
Yeah.
Yes.
No, I haven't had a chance. Plan is to watch it. It's a 2-hour flight. You're sticking it on Spotify. I'm watching it. So, but I heard it was a corker. So, looking forward to it.
It was good. It was good. It was very interesting. The whole conversation about people do not know what an assessment process looks like, or is involved in that. And that was specifically. I mean, they did cover more than just the chair, but that covered kind of a fair bit of ergonomics. But it'd be interesting to. I think from that, it would be interesting at some point for us to get on someone like Chris Barlow or someone that does a lot of assessments.
Yeah.
And again, perhaps, especially as he's got quite a nice setup now that he could go through, but perhaps actually go through kind of an assessment process with somebody else whilst we're on air, and actually just talk about all the sort of things that they look at, because I think that would be really interesting for people to see the level of detail that people go through when they have an assessment. I don't think people realize. I think, and there'll be a lot of people out there who think, what's a workplace assessment? Oh, it's that survey that I get once a year where it asks me, are you feeling okay? Yes, thanks, bye.
Yeah. Well, I'm speaking to Chris next week, so I will sow the seeds and line him up for the coming weeks to get on and do a live assessment, or an assessment for us to watch back and discuss on the show anyway.
Oh, that'd be brilliant. I also think I'd like to talk to them as well about the access to work process, because I think that what I'm hearing is there's a lot of people out there who are entitled to access to work, but are then finding the process of getting their access to work funding, turning that into practical help, quite difficult. And it'd be good to kind of demystify that, so that actually people can get the equipment and the support that they need as well.
Yeah.
It's been a great chat. It's been good to catch up with you again.
Yes.
Look, we have given you great ideas for businesses today. If you're an entrepreneur out there, you're now looking at this thinking, this is gold. If you do start any of those businesses, do let us know. We will be back same time, same place next week with another Wow Ergonomics. There will be a guest. And until then, look after yourself. Take care. Do check us out on wowergonomics.com, where you can see previous episodes, and also follow us now on the Instagram as well, where we do have a few photos of what we're up to. So that would be good too. Bye for now.
Bye for now.